Hello, Packers fans. It's time for another edition of the Pack Attack Cast. This is our post game analysis of the Green Bay Packers 23-19 victory over the Colts. We're going to talk about the good and the bad of this Packers victory. Before we get to that, we're almost at 8,000 subs. Can we get to that before this week's preseason game? Your subs can make that happen. So if you haven't already subbed, please give us a sub. If you already are a subscriber, give us a like because that helps the algorithms in YouTube help other people discover our streams. So let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of this week's 23-19 victory over the Colts. First of all, I'll bet you there's a lot of people who tuned out after halftime in this game. At halftime, it was 13-3. The Packers were struggling on their offensive line, especially. And there was a lot of reason for a lot of people to actually tune out. So I haven't seen the numbers yet, but I'd be very surprised, or I wouldn't be surprised if the second half numbers were much lower than the first half, because I think a lot of people, especially after the Jets preseason game, probably tuned out after the first half. But there's a lot of good things that came out of this game in addition to the Packers' victory. So I want to highlight some of the good stuff, some of the bad stuff that the Packers need to work on for next week. We're 21 days, or I think 21 days away from week one between the Packers and Detroit Lions at Lambeau. I'll be there for that game, very excited about it. But the Packers have got a lot of work to do. So do the Lions. The Lions have had struggles in the preseason as well as some injury issues. So it's going to be interesting to see between the Lions and the Packers which team is ready on week one to dictate the tempo of the game. I think it's going to be a very interesting game week number one. And it's a game that might easily decide the division on week one. I mean, it's that important of a game to have in the first week of the season. If the Packers lose, they're in danger of getting swept by the Lions because they're going to have to go to Detroit on Thanksgiving, which is always tough to do, and get a win. If the Packers do win, then they can get an early jump on the division because the Detroit Lions have a really hard schedule the first 10 games of the season. So if the Packers can get ahead, even if it's just by a game, they might just be in a situation where that resolves who the winner of the division is. The Bears are looking like they need a lot of work, so I don't think the Bears are going to be a big disruptor till next year maybe. The Vikings, they're not giving J.J. McCarthy a lot of preseason snaps, and I think that's going to lead to a slow start. Plus, their number 2 receiver is going to be out for 3 of the first games. That's another issue for the Vikings. So there's a lot of things that can give the Packers an early momentum in the division if they win week one. But let's talk about this preseason game. I have a list of things that I'm very excited about. I have a list of things that I have concerns about that the Packers need to work to clean up on. So number one on my list, and if you watched our live play-by-play, which we'll do again for this upcoming preseason game, I was very excited to see the Packers go on 4th down as many times as they did. They went on 4th down 4 times, and they were successful 4 times, including the first possession. They had a 4th and 3 on their own 47, and they went for it. This is a huge point of emphasis for me going into the offseason is the Green Bay Packers have to be more aggressive whenever possible. If it's 4th down and you're in your opponent's territory, go for it on fourth down and rely on your defense. If it's fourth and makeable, if it's 4th and 3, then you really should try to go for it on fourth down if you're on the opponent's side of the field. But the Packers went on their own 47-yard line in the first drive on a 4th and 3, and they got it. And I think that set the tone for the whole game for them to be aggressive on fourth downs. They converted 4 of 4. Now, it'll be interesting to see because Stenovich was calling plays in the preseason, not Matt LaFleur. I'm sure Matt LaFleur had input. Maybe he stepped in from time to time and suggested something, but it was Stenovich's play calls throughout the game. What I would like the Packers to realize is they, even with their backup number 2 offense, they were able to be successful on fourth down. Switch that up, and you've got Jordan Love and all those wide receivers and a Pro Bowl running back and a great offensive line. You should be dictating terms to your opponent on fourth down. So I hope they take this to heart. We'll see in the next preseason game if they go on it again on fourth down. But, I believe if they weren't that aggressive on fourth down, they probably would have lost this game. So I really want the Packers to take this to heart. I want the Packers fans to take this to heart. We need to encourage our team to be aggressive. The Lions are aggressive on fourth down. The Eagles are aggressive on fourth down. If we want to get to that level of competitiveness, then the Green Bay Packers also need to consistently go for it on fourth down in the right situations. I'm not telling you to go on 4th and 10 on your own 20-yard line or anything like that, but there are situations, critical moments in the game, especially when you have a dominant defense, that you can go for it on fourth down and be successful. Next on my list, Marshawn Lloyd. We saw more snaps from Marshawn than we've seen since the preseason of last year, and he was very effective. Now, the Colts were pretty stout against the run. The Packers got 4 yards per carry in the running game, but Marshawn Lloyd was effective with the carries that he had. But his involvement in the passing game is really what makes him a special player. Okay? I love Josh Jacobs. He is a great running back on early downs. But I think making Marshawn Lloyd your third down back gives you so many more options on third down and even fourth down. Because Marshawn Lloyd had a great wheel route. He got a 33-yard catch out of it. It was a beautiful catch. Malik Willis put it the only place where that ball could go and be successful, on a dime. And that is the second level ability that Marshawn Lloyd brings to the table that Brooks and Wilson just do not. So assuming Marshawn Lloyd is healthy, not only is he your change of pace back, but if he could show consistency on third down, he might end up being your third down running back. Now, the one thing we have to see with Marshawn Lloyd is, can he pick up the blitz on third down as he needs to be? If he can't consistently stop the blitz on third down, that could be a serious problem with Marshawn Lloyd's ability to get onto the field. But there's no question he was a very dynamic player. He had 4 targets in the passing game. He only completed 1. There was one play on a shovel pass. Malik Willis was trying to avoid a sack. So he did a little bit of a short shovel pass to Marshawn Lloyd. It was right in his fingertips, and he fumbled it and dropped it. That is the type of play he needs to make, especially if he's in there at critical parts of the game. But he had nobody in front of him. That probably would have been a 20 to 30 yard completion if he had caught that play, because it was basically a broken play. It was either going to be a sack, an incomplete, or a successful pass to Lloyd for good yardage, and it became an incomplete pass. So that's something Lloyd needs to work on. And that was right in his hands. So that's a positive. Next up for me, Jordan Morgan. Second game in a row where he was very solid at left tackle. A couple weeks ago, most people thought this left tackle competition was just lip service and that Walker was going to be locked in as the left tackle. I'm starting to be very surprised with Jordan Morgan's progress. I'm assuming he's going to get the start week 3, and we'll see if he continues to be successful. But I think there's a real competition for Jordan Morgan at left tackle. I think Walker is still going to end up being your left tackle at least for week 1, because they're going up against the Lions, and you don't want to have an unknown out there at left tackle against the Lions. But you can sub Jordan Morgan in to give Walker some rest. You can also have him as a swing tackle right now on left or right. And Jordan Morgan is still in competition for the right guard spot as well. So Jordan Morgan's development here is huge news for the Green Bay Packers. Regardless of whether he's your starter, Jordan Morgan playing at a high level makes the whole offensive line so much better. Whether he's a backup or a starter, it's just huge for the Green Bay Packers' depth. So hopefully we'll see that continue in week number 3. Rushing attack in general, the Packers were very effective in the rushing game in general. It was 4 yards per carry, but there were times where they got really nice long runs in the game. They got 9 first downs on runs in this game, and that's really great to see. That shows a healthy running game. That shows the offensive line finding ways to be competitive and open up holes. The running game was especially effective in the second half when the Packers were fighting to get back into the game competitively. The Packers were able to use their backup running backs and continue to get a persistent rushing attack. Time of possession, almost 5 minutes advantage for the Green Bay Packers. Very excited to see that, and a lot of that came from that consistent run game, which I already talked about. Red zone efficiency in this game, we were 3 for 3 in red zone trips. If you look at 2023, one of the reasons the Green Bay Packers were so effective at the end of the season was their their red zone efficiency was so much better than 2024. And we didn't have a lot of playmakers out there, and we were still very effective in the red zone. Perfect 3-4-3. So if you didn't watch this game, and even if you did, this might have missed your attention. But the Colts were starting most of their starting lineup for most of the 2 quarters. And the reason for that was that they have a quarterback competition going on. So on offense, they kept their starters out there for a very long period of time. And the Green Bay Packers did not start any of their starters in this game. Our second team defense was actually pretty solid against the Colts' first team offense. That is a huge sign of depth and development on this roster. The fact that they had starting caliber players out there and the Packers were playing backups and the defense held up really well. They gave up 13 points in the first half and only 6 points in the second half. And that was a really good showing on defense without any starting players out there. So I'm very enthusiastic about what we have on defense from a depth perspective. It was very impressive to see this team battle back into this game. First half ended, it was 13-3 Colts. From that point on, the Packers outscored them 16-6. And that is a huge turnaround in the second half. And a lot of that was because we had problems in the first half of the game. So let's talk about the bad from this game and how they can work to get better. Anthony Belton, first half, had 5 penalties for 35 yards, and most of these were mental mistakes. Illegal formation multiple times, a face mask, which probably could have been avoided. He also had a unnecessary roughness, which could have been avoided. There was a lot of problems with Anthony Belton in the first half. And if you watched the Packers network, which I saw on replay, because when I saw, the national broadcast was the Colts broadcast that I saw on NFL Plus. But when I went back and looked at the Packers broadcast, you could see Matt LaFleur went right after Anthony Belton at the end of the first half. He was in his face telling him he's got to clean this stuff up. Now, in a regular season game, Anthony Belton would have been benched after that first half. However, the Packers, due to depth issues and the fact that it was the preseason, put Anthony Belton back in the second half, and he played much better in the second half. So this is a high quality physical player who has to get over the mental mistakes that he made in the first half. So he owned his mistakes after the game, and he was much better in the second half, because if he played as poorly as he did in the first half, I don't think the Packers would have won this game. In fact, in the second half, I almost had PTSD. I'm like, oh, okay, where's the Belton flag? We just made a good play. Is there going to be a Belton flag? And there was no Belton flags in the second half. So Anthony Belton is a developmental player for depth this year. That really reinforces how important Jordan Morgan's development is, because if Rasheed Walker goes down or Zach Tom goes down for a week or two, I think Jordan Morgan can be fine either at left tackle or right tackle. If we put Anthony Belton into the starting lineup right now, I think it would be a recipe for disaster until he has more experience to avoid those mental mistakes. So Jordan Morgan can offset some of these challenges with Belton as a developmental player. Let's talk about pass coverage. So while the Packer defense overall did pretty good job of limiting the Colts to mostly field goals, there were open receivers on a consistent basis. This is mainly due to the Packers being shorthanded in the secondary due to injuries and not starting any number one player. And the scheme, if you looked at the scheme for the Packers, it was very vanilla with lots of deep zones throughout this game. I don't think Jeff Hafley's going to do that in a regular game. He's much better about mixing up things, including putting some man in. But the Packers, quite frankly, didn't have the personnel in the game to do anything other than a lot of deep zones. If they'd done man coverage, it would have been very much worse. So while there were lots of Colts that were open, I will give the Packers credit. There was a lot of rallying to the football. When you saw a Colt catch the ball or the Colt run the ball, you would see multiple Packers swarm in on the tackle. And that's what you want to see if you're forced to play zones. You want to make sure you limit the big plays. And they did do that for the most part in this game. They didn't have a lot of deep zone successes by the Colts. So that was one negative that I think is actually going to go away when you have the starters out there and you have Jeff Hafley actually mixing up his coverages. because he was not mixing it up that I saw in that game until maybe the very end when they were trying to really stop the Colts and hold on for a win. One bad thing, I want to talk about the fumble by Wilson. While it was the only turnover, this could have been a huge impact, but the defense held the Colts to a field goal when Wilson fumbled the ball deep in Green Bay Packers territory. So that's something that Wilson needs to work on. The Packers overall have done a really good job in camp on working on avoiding fumbles and causing fumbles. We've seen that consistently throughout training camp. So fumbles are going to happen. There's no question about it. But Wilson's fumble was not at the best time because it was near the Packers' end zone, but the defense stepped up and held them to a field goal. On the plus side, the Packers were throwing the ball around a lot in this game, and there was no interceptions. And for El Guerzma and for the number 3 quarterback to Sean Clifford, lost my train of thought for a second, with El Guerzma and Sean Clifford throwing the ball around so much, it was very good to see that they didn't throw the ball into risk. There were a couple plays that could have resulted into interceptions. There was one interception that was called back on a holding, I think a face mask. So you're going to get that with backup quarterbacks because El Guerzma and Sean Clifford are in a tough position. And you have to keep in mind the fact that they're competing for a job, and it's a real catch-22 for them. If they make big aggressive plays and they're successful, they might win that job. If they throw too many interceptions, they can lose that job. So El Guerzma and Clifford are both in a position where it's really easy to be too aggressive because they're trying to win the job, but they also both managed to not throw interceptions. I also want to say Sean Clifford did a great job in the final drive that led to the winning touchdown. Very exciting to see that type of play. Not only because Sean Clifford ran it in for the game-winning touchdown, but that's the type of play that Jordan Love could also do in the regular season. That type of play in the playbook is very exciting to see with Jordan Love in the backfield. So overall impressions, this was a solid win in the preseason. We saw the second unit be competitive with the first unit of the Colts. We saw consistent, sustained drives on the offense when the Packers needed them to win the game. The defense was solid against high-quality players and kept the team in the game and got them a victory with some strong defense at the end. So it was a really good, great team victory. One thing I will throw out there is special teams still has problems. We had a muffed punt. We also had a punt that was fielded inside the 10 again, which I think is a mistake. That's the type of thing that if it's going to bounce into the end zone, you need to get away from the ball consistently. And that's something special teams really has to work on. But keep in mind, the Packers are trying out multiple players for returns right now, so you're going to get inconsistency until you have one player that is your punt returner and kick returner on a consistent basis. So that's it for today. Looking ahead at the schedule for the Packers, let me just pull out the schedule here. So today, Sunday, is a rest day for the Packers. Monday, I believe, is a rest day. It's either going to be a rest day or it's a practice with the media only. I haven't gotten confirmation on that. So I'm going to watch that very closely in the morning to see if there's practice on Monday. And if there is, we'll get you the practice notes. On Tuesday, we do know that there is going to be a practice open to the public. And on Thursday, there is a practice open to the public that is going to be the joint practice with the Seahawks. So, and that's it. There's 2 more practices open to the public, Tuesday and Thursday. And Thursday is going to be packed because it's going to be a joint practice with the Seahawks. So we only have 2 more practices before we get to the end of training camp. And we're into the regular season the following week. And we have a bye week with the holiday, and then it's into the regular season. So the Packers really need to make the most of the next week. My feeling is Jordan Love is definitely going to be practicing in that practice against the Seahawks. I think they put him in the practice with the Seahawks because that's Jordan Love's last real chance to get some reps without the chance of an injury because he's going to have the red jersey on. So I think it's going to be incumbent upon the Packers to get Jordan Love into that Thursday practice at a minimum so he can get some real competition in the passing game before week 1. I don't expect Jordan Love to play in the game against the Seahawks, although if some of the starters are healthy again, you might be surprised to see some of them sprinkled into the game against the Seahawks because they want to get some last-minute in-game reps. So we're going to have to see what happens there. The game for against the Seahawks will be Saturday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, 3 p.m. Central Time, and I anticipate doing a play-by-play watch party for that on Saturday. It was a lot of fun doing it this week, so we'll probably do that again this week. I can't do that week 1 because I'll actually be in the stands for week 1, but we'll have a post-game analysis after week 1, of course. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Pack Attack Cast. Give us a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and we'll be back with Packers news as soon as we have it. If it's Monday, we'll have news and notes on Monday. If it's Tuesday, we'll have news and notes on Tuesday. We're also going to do a pre-game show for the Seahawks game, and we're going to keep you up to date with all your Packers content. So we'll see you then. As always, go Pack Go.